The thing that's really exciting for me is AI is coming along, and if you embrace it, if you keep up, it's a really cool time to be alive. And if you don't, the converse is probably true. It's a pretty scary time to be alive if you're not keeping up. I think now what I'm realizing is it's hard everywhere. No matter what the size, it's hard. Things are moving so fast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Shipping Excellence. I'm Andrew Duncan, and I have Carrick Carpenter, who's the Chief AI Officer at Aditi. Carrick and I go way back. I worked for him at Slalom, where he led the Charlotte Build Center and then the AI practice. And today we're going to talk about what it looks like to build and deliver work in a services firm in this new world of AI. Welcome, Carrick.
So good to be here.
Yeah, man.
Love spending time with you.
Yeah, I know. It's always exciting. So you started as an architect and an engineer, and then you led technology at Slalom, which is where we met, the Build Center, and then you moved into the AI practice, and now you're at Aditi. Tell me a little bit about your background and your career path and how it led to where you are today.
All right. So as I look back, I feel like I'm just a builder,
Yeah.
period. I did start off as a programmer, led teams, did the whole thing, found myself getting a little further away from the tech, building businesses for Dell, NTT, some big companies, and kind of had an epiphany one day, man, I'm getting pretty far away from being a builder. It's kind of fun building businesses, but I really just I get joy out of the technology side of it. And so you and I got to spend time at Slalom. That was me re-anchoring on building and going back into the tech. Now, fast forward inside of Aditi, the thing that's really exciting for me is AI is coming along, and if you embrace it, if you keep up, it's a really cool time to be alive. And if you don't, the converse is probably true. It's a pretty scary time to be alive if you're not keeping up. But anchoring at Aditi, something I hope to bring was, an AI-led, AI-enabled consulting organization. Not a huge place to try to, practice it at, put it in play, do the thing, and begin to execute. So I think now what I'm realizing is it's hard everywhere. No matter what the size, it's hard. Things are moving so fast. Even at Aditi, it's like, man, you think you got it figured out, and then you don't. But from a career progression perspective, my intention is to create an AI-enabled, AI-first company. And we'll talk today, there are green shoots of that happening in multiple places, and then some things that I'm having to rethink, just like everybody, I hope.
Yeah. It is an exciting time to be alive if you're interested in learning rapidly and riding the wave, right? It does change rapidly, and so you have to continuously learn, pick up new skills. You're going to be solving new problems and more than we ever have before, because before this, things were kind of figured out, or we thought things were kind of figured out, right? Everyone, did agile, and we had these processes built around it. And one of the things that I think is interesting now is that builder mindset that you just talked about, right? Like wherever you apply it, whether it's in business, it's in the tech, system architecture, code, whatever. That builder mindset, like the creation of value and figuring out problems, I think that's the skill set that's key today, given the speed of change and the amount that we have to learn, right? Because we're always on the forefront trying to figure things out,
Yeah.
right? And so I think a lot of companies are doing that. That's why you see these upshoots. I share that same mentality. It's just like, it doesn't really matter what the problem is. I want to explore it. I want to figure it out. What are all the ins and outs, and then figure out what the best solution is. I think that's engineering in general, right? Like the mindset and how you approach things. So
I heard a new term this week from a coworker, and she's fantastic. We're sitting in this builder space. Many of us have backgrounds in engineering, but we're also leaders. And so the term that she said was, we are full stack leaders.
yeah,
You have to know the full stack, the breadth of solving a business problem, creating value, and a deep understanding of how to get things done with new tools.
100%. And then you have to continue to explore it too, because none of it's stable, right?
Right.
Like it's always changing. I like that, full stack leaders.
We're full stack leaders,
Yeah.
Duncan.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, one of the thoughts that's been formulating in my head is, what does it mean to deliver now, right? And what roles do you need? What is the process, right? Scale, and what roles do you need? One of my hypotheses is that there are new roles forming, but they're not necessarily new actions or new outcomes that people are producing. I think of it as a collapsing of roles, right? Before you needed a team, right? You need your designer, your product strategist, your engineer, your, someone to make sure the process is running on time.
Yeah.
But I think that that's collapsing. And what that means, like the full, to use your terminology, the full stack leader is the person who can roll up their sleeves, get in there with everybody else, and assume some of those roles that were previously different people on a team. And so I'm curious about at Aditi, because you guys are larger than us, and it's uh, when you're running these teams at scale, where are you finding the improvements because people are using AI, and where are you finding some of the sticking points that you're still trying to figure out?
This is a fun one. We could use sports analogies and, maybe, we both love CrossFit and
Yep.
things like that, right? And there are levels to that game, right?
Yes.
And then the same's true here. What I'm seeing is there are standout engineers. And by the way, I think engineering is back. The coding part of it is figured out.
Yeah.
But for the people that remember the days when we used to do ERD diagrams, get on a whiteboard, try to figure things out.
Yes.
I think that's back, but it's trying to find the value. It's trying to really architect what good would be, what the value would be for a customer. And then the execution side gets interesting to me. There's an engineer that did in one day 90 pull requests. I tease him and tell him he didn't even do one. All of his agents did it, right?
You didn't do it. Yeah.
But not everybody can do that. Not everybody can do 90 pull
Agreed.
requests with Claude Code. It takes a certain mindset to go, I'm going to clone the repos 4 times. I'm going to put in agent orchestration over the top of it, and I'm going to kick this thing off, and it's going to work.
Yep.
That is not the average engineer. So how do you take, back to levels to this game, how do you take that engineer that can do 90 pull requests in a day, put a system around it, a process around it, and invite others into that process where you maybe have 2 AI engineers, quality engineer, a product owner, they can go pull that off at scale and do it repeatedly. I don't know. We're still working through that. There are people that are getting it, and they're getting it fast, and they're fantastic. So there is still a human disparity, if you will, that we're trying to figure out.
I think that's this kind of goes back to the concept of a 10Xer, right?
Yeah.
Like, your top engineers are 10 times more productive or valuable to the organization, or whatever metric, right, than the level right below them.
Yeah.
And that these are the people who can do the 90 pull requests now.
Yeah.
Before, it just looked like they were able to move work through the process. Like, they could solve the hard problems
Totally.
much faster, but also they could solve problems that other people couldn't solve, right? And so I agree. I think engineering is back. Some of the funnest times were when we were on the whiteboard and we're figuring out what the solution should be for the problem that we're trying to solve. I think all of that requires a deep understanding of the problem space, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you're building a B2B SaaS, or you're, doing AI native operations for an organization, you have to embed and understand that specific company's problems, right? Like, what departments are doing, where the handoffs are, or in the B2B SaaS space, what is the person who's going to use this trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And I think, yes, the world where those people who enjoy that part of the process, they're just gonna hockey stick up to the right, like they're gonna explode in their careers, because that's what the world's looking at. Because the writing of the code, like the plumbing developers are gone.
It's done.
That's done, right?
It's done.
You need the people who are looking for the solution to the problem, the best solution to the problem.
Yeah.
And I think, we're figuring it out too, right? Like, we have our same thing, engineers spin up, I don't think we've done 90 pull requests yet, but I'm pretty sure we've done like 45,
Yeah.
50 in a day, but they'll spin them up and then they've got to work through them. And one of the pain points that we're finding is no one actually likes reviewing pull requests. No one actually wants to go in. They do want to know that the implementation was quality and the solution is working.
Right.
And so we're actually we're trying to optimize that part of our process now, so that the joy of the craft is still there.
Yeah.
You know?
GitHub Actions, all that.
Yeah.
You take care of all the minutia. And
Yeah.
you go
Yeah.
back to the full stack leaders, and people kind of come at the problems different ways, but getting with customers, understanding the problem space, the outcomes, taking joy in figuring out whether you start off with a lovable or your own favorite process, or you get into Claude Code and create HTML file, just understanding the problem space and then really sitting in how do we bring this to life?
Yeah.
Whether you use spec-driven development or TDD, whatever it is, how are you going to bring that back into the organization and really scale it? I think that the next part of it, that after you find the problem, after you take the joy in the engineering, how can you invite other people in the process? And, think soccer. We'll
Yeah.
just stick with the sports analogy.
Yeah.
Like, you go watch your kids at a young age play soccer, and it's like everybody's following that ball, right? It's swarm ball. Everybody's around the same ball. And then as you get better and older, you get into advanced leagues, and the field spreads out and you're passing the ball around. I think right now the hard part is going from the 90 pull request, which I'll say is kindergarten ball, very
Yeah,
talented
yeah.
kindergartner, right? Very talented. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't try to put those two together, right? But someone's very talented. How do you spread the ball and invite people, more people into the process at scale for bigger products, bigger outcomes?
Yeah. Yes. Uh, that's interesting. Um, at scale, right? Like the problem sets are the same,
Yeah.
right? Delivery and like understanding the problem sets has sped up, right? Like no one has to write code anymore, right? And so uh, I don't have the answer to that, but I have a hypothesis,
Yeah.
and so that is back to the theme of collapsing roles. My hypothesis is this: you have someone who's like deeply embedded in the domain, right? And like one of the things I'm talking about for think mid-market companies, like the executive team, they're trying to move needles, push the business forward, increase sales, reduce operational costs, right?
Yeah.
And so they have hypotheses at a high level. They don't really know how it works in the weeds, right? They're kind of too far removed. But them with like, here's the needles we're trying to move. This is the outcome we're trying to achieve, paired with someone in this new role that I don't have a name for, that is doing some exploratory work in the art of the possible,
Yeah.
compared with a staff engineer. So it's a small team, right?
Yeah.
But they can place what I've been calling bets. So here's a bet. Here's the hypothesis we're going to make, right? Maybe we optimize this process here, right? Here's the bottlenecks. We optimize that with some AI capabilities, and it's not all AI. It's like AI plus some integrations. There's still
Yeah.
plumbing, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, but the cycle time is reduced now to 3 6 weeks to from like idea to we're testing it, evaluating, and so I don't I think there's still bottlenecks in there that doesn't scale linearly necessarily, but you can have your idea guy paired with strategists, paired with staff engineers, and I think you can scale it that way. That's my hypothesis.
I
We're
need to be
testing it.
careful with my soccer analogy then, right? Because you just had a 3-person soccer team.
Yeah.
Like, we got maybe we are still playing swarm ball. We just have a small team getting more done.
Yeah, I think you have more balls.
Yeah, more
I
balls,
think
yeah.
you have more balls, right? The
Yeah,
balls are the bets. The balls are like the needles that you want to move, right?
yeah,
In soccer, you're trying to make a goal, right?
yeah,
But in business, you're trying to make a bunch of goals
yeah,
simultaneously or as fast as you can,
yeah,
right? And so I don't know. That's how I'm thinking about it.
yeah. I like it. We're doing a lot more with fewer team members at scale. But I don't think well, you used a term. There are two things I want to hit on. You used the term cycle time. We have a whole generation of people that grew up now with agile mindsets,
Hmm.
and it's collapsing. And the new measure may be cycle time, or is it fast waterfall? I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden the points and the sprints don't matter. Just the full features are done. So
Yeah.
you're producing features in a day.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I talked to Jarvis about this. Who's our VP of Engineering and Delivery at Vertice Labs. We were iterating on how do we move from, all right, here's the problem we're trying to solve, whether that's a SaaS or AI native operations implementation. How do we move from that to the the context sharing to the delivery team
Yeah.
to it's providing value, right? Because speed to value to the customer is, in my mind, that's the measure of
That's it.
success, right? Like whether they're trying to generate revenue, reduce costs, have better SLAs, whatever it is, right? Like speed to value. And so that's always the problem that we're trying to solve at the high level. And cycle time is one of the metrics that we use to optimize, right? So like how do we reduce that? All right, so you guys are doing this. You're experimenting with this. You've got Claude Code, this is interesting because like you're an executive at a pretty decent sized firm, and you're in the terminal, Claude Code, OpenClaw, whatever. You've got your tools, right? And you're using that, and I think that's true all the way down. That's kind of where we are today.
Yeah.
Is everyone's using these tools, and like you can use uh, Claude Cowork or just the browser version and set your projects up, and like I have built my own um, process that takes all of my conversations that I'm having with internal conversations, clients, prospects in the sales process. It downloads all the transcripts. It has all of this context. And one of the things that we're betting on is that uh, AI on top of your data is the tool today. That's the tool, right? Like, and I think that'll be the tool of the future. Is like you don't all of this UI and clicking and process, like the agile process. that used to exist to organize people is collapsing. And so A on top of your data is the solution today. And so I've built this internal process that allows us to do that. And so then when we go and do an implementation, right, for a mid-market company, we do all these interviews. We talk to a bunch of people, like all from the top all the way down to the people doing the work, right? So we have all this context, and we make that available, right, to our clients, so they can search it. They can just ask questions to it, like who's doing what and why and where are the problems. And then we use that plus the data they have to reverse engineer like the most effective solution for them. And so that's one way that we're reducing cycle time.
So it's amazing, right? Why wouldn't she do it that way?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
They're
know.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people we're doing something similar, right? I can't imagine people not doing,
Yeah,
you know, drinking their own champagne, right? If you're talking to your customers about delivering value and you're not doing yourself,
yeah.
like what are you
What are
doing?
you doing?
But just thinking about Aditi and things we're doing, right? We use a tool called Gong to record, and it coaches us. We try to improve with the AI tools, and coach us up. Our best seller, we kind of see what's going on, how they won. We can inspect it, maybe bring some of those lessons learned over to somebody else. But ultimately, we're going to take that conversation, we're going to extract it, put it into Claude, connect it to Salesforce through an MCP, you know, move it into our operations component. It's called Rudder.
Yeah,
And we're starting to do the same thing, but it started out as let's experiment.
yeah.
And inside of a DT, it's a couple $100 million company. It's not smaller. It
Right.
got some
Yeah.
decent scale. So how do we get started? And it was very much just experiment. Get Claude Code licenses. I'm going to use the heck out of it, right? Claude Cowork kind of unlocked people, and you start seeing light bulbs go off
Yeah.
across departments or individual productivity. And the individual productivity was all of a sudden pretty cool to watch. And I'm an owner of our Claude account, so I can kind of see the usage going up. And you get to ask more questions. Tell me how you're using it. I can see your usage is up pretty high, which is not a bad thing.
It's a good thing.
Burn those tokens.
That's what I
right?
tell my team.
Burn
Burn
them.
them.
And maybe it's not going to be like that forever. It's like, God, could you use Sonnet instead of Opus 4.6?
Yeah.
You don't have to use it for everything.
Yeah.
But just watching the light bulbs go off at individual productivity, and then you realize, wow, okay, the way they're using that data is pretty interesting. I wonder if we could formalize that across their team versus the individual. And then you start building out an infrastructure that people can access. You pull it into plugins. You watch people use the plugins. The token count goes even higher. If you're
Yep.
not careful, you're not putting skills over the top of it. But then that individual productivity turns into team productivity. And then the next step, similar to what you're already doing is, okay, now how do we use the Claude SDK to start orchestrating more and more of our internal workflows so that we don't have to do those individual productivity items. And trust me, there is no lack of work to do.
Oh yeah.
We are just going to go focus on adding value, right? There's this capacity paradox.
Yes.
We can't improve our own worlds because we're so darn busy doing the stuff we do now. If we can just give people a little breathing room through some of these AI tools by moving from individual productivity to team to organizational, then we can go, okay, now I can reorient towards my customer and deliver value. So that is the journey we're on right now. What's harder is going to the customer and going, hey, how do we get you going? And they haven't even started experimenting yet. And we go, hey, we're going to improve your cycle times with the tools that they're not ready in many cases. So while we're going on this journey and we want to start talking about cycle times and the way we're bringing the 10X or the 90 pull request a day with our customers, like, we would prefer you plug into this agile sprint ceremony, right? So there is this give and take. We're learning, we're getting better ourselves. We don't have everything figured out on the delivery side, but we're trying to learn from ourselves first, and then structure, some of our implementation, structure some of our contracts in a way that we can go deliver some of what we're learning. And we're in that discomfort at the moment of we're not all the way there ourselves, and everything keeps changing, and our customers aren't ready either.
Yeah.
And so how do we navigate this together? And I think there has to be a very trusting relationship in order to try these new things out.
Yeah. This is, I think, this capacity paradox is really interesting. And I see it in two fronts. One, it's like, yeah, it's difficult for us to improve our own internal processes and build a structure around that because we're all focused on providing value to our clients.
Yeah.
And then the second one is because we can deliver so much faster now, what we're finding is the person who's operating the machine, right, who's running the 90 or creating the 90 pull request or the multiple agents, We are the human limitation of what we can hold in our head as context is limiting now. Like the tools allow us to go faster than we are capable of now.
Yeah.
And that maybe that's kind of to your point, how do you spread the ball around of
Yeah.
maybe like because that's the limitation, maybe you just duplicate that, right? So you have a team of 10Xers um who are absorbing their own part of the problem space, understanding that deeply. They have, some relational or tangential understanding of the problem space just adjacent to it, and they're marching together, right? And so, I mean, this is how would if you remember like program increments and agile, right?
Yeah.
Safe, right? Scale. This is kind of how you would organize a 150-person team to move in the same direction. But like, it's just you need less of them now, but you're all solving different parts of the problem
But some of
space.
the stuff is still big.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not like we're vibe coding things for Fortune 100 companies, right?
right.
These are real products, and
Yes.
you can't do it in one person's head.
No,
In
you
fact,
can't.
if we try, we're going to burn them out. There's already all sorts of studies out there talking about the people that are most adept at using AI are burning out the fastest.
Yeah.
One of the people on the team, you can check it on LinkedIn. He actually posted, he said, I can't even go to the bathroom in good conscience without kicking off my Claude code before I go because I don't want to waste time, right? He's having to respond so quickly
Yes.
that
Yes.
he feels an obligation to keep his agents working while he goes and takes a break.
Yeah. Well, right. Because like I just watched this thing on Simon Sinek said, and it was like when you're trying to detect burnout, because it's something I monitor closely. Because I don't. Because again, yes, it's like we have this intrinsic pull. People who have like this intrinsic motivation to do exceptional work. We have this pull to like always be maximizing productivity, right?
Right.
And so it's Simon Sinek said this is like the people who work nights and weekends a little bit are probably the least at risk for burning out. It's the people who always do it consistently, or the people who never do it, and that's because
Oh,
they're not
interesting.
people who never do it are not motivated. They're bored.
Yeah.
They're just not invested, right? Like for whatever reason. The people always doing it is because there's just too much on their plate, right? Um, yeah, third part of the capacity problem is the client, right? And so uh, this is one of the things that we've been doing in our conversations is sort of setting and managing expectations that this can go significantly faster than anyone's used to. And that's a problem because clients aren't ready, internal teams aren't ready, engineering teams aren't ready, things look new. And then of course you're navigating who can move work through a pipeline within an organization. And so um, I agree, a high trust relationship with a firm who knows what they're doing and who are also, transparent about like, we're also figuring it out.
Yeah.
Here's where we are on that curve.
Right.
Here are the problems that we face and solve. So we're going to bring that expertise to you because you're going to be on that same curve,
This is where we stubbed our toe. This is where we've seen issues. And
Yeah.
I can guarantee you this, if nothing else, there will be problems on this delivery,
Yes.
but we're in it with you. We'll
Yes.
figure it out, and we're going to go faster, but it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, any business, any entrepreneur, any business knows. I mean, that's the job.
That's the job.
So
It's a little messy.
yeah. Yeah.
It's going faster and better,
Yeah.
better than ever
Yeah. It is exciting. It's an exciting time to be alive, right? Like,
if you're keeping up,
if you're keeping up.
and that's important.
Yeah.
And I think people are having more fun than ever if you're keeping up. So
Yes.
despite the burnout levels increasing, when I'm talking to team members, they're having fun in a new way because all the minutia is being removed, the execution and the ideas get brought to life, and you get that wow moment with customers, that outcome faster than ever. And
Yes.
that's kind of why we're in it, right? We want to serve customers that dopamine hit of,
Yes.
man, I solved your problem. And I did it without writing a whole lot of getters and setters along all
Yeah.
that stuff, right? We actually get to go do the thing. It's
Yeah.
amazing
Yes.
if you're keeping up.
That's the most fun, or at least for me. I think for a lot of the engineers we were talking about, that is the most fun part of the job. Is like we did a thing and it's working. Someone's using our software,
Yeah.
right? Like they're using my workout, but we provided value to the world, right?
Yeah.
I think that is the most exciting part of it,
Absolutely.
right? And so that the benefit of this is the people who are going to excel, the people who keep keeping up, because that's always what they've been chasing anyway, right? You remember we writing code by hand. One of the benefits was you got the quick dopamine hits because you clicked the button and it compiled, or it didn't. And
Yeah.
so now you're like, oh, I need more dopamine, so I'm gonna fix it, and then it compiled, right? Like
Yeah.
you're kind of chasing this, and like now you get to chase that at a much higher level,
Right.
because the people who excel at that. So that's really exciting.
The loops
So-
are faster, impact is faster, the response is faster.
Yeah.
Everything's faster, but not in a bad way. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
We can get to an outcome in special ways these days.
Yeah. So you were brought on to Aditi to bring in essentially AI native engineering. What does that mean at a firm of that size? What does that mean to your customers? How do you start putting structure all around that? So what are some of the learnings to date at the executive level? What are some of the learnings to date, and what are some of the hypotheses that you're making to continue to provide that value to your customers?
It's a hard question. It's a
Mhm.
loaded question. Gotta be, so here's what I found. I came in a little too idealistically. I think, it's a small company. I'm going to go in, make some changes. We know what to do. I'm gonna knock this out. Not easy, right? It's not easy, and not you know there are different levels to the problem. One is, our customer base at Aditi by and large is they're big customers,
Yeah.
Fortune 500, and it moves at a different pace. So you're up doing proofs of concepts. You're showing them what's possible. All right, let's go. Well, hold on. Let's talk to the security team. We don't want you to run Claude code in our environment. There's some things that kind of hang us up. So I haven't been able to push the envelope as much as I wanted in certain customer areas. So it turns out, I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time trying to force it
Mhm.
and would have just stepped back and gone, okay, I'm going to carve out. We've got a great team that delivers every day doing a certain thing for our customers. I wish I would have carved out sooner a
Mhm.
team. We got one called AI Labs now that goes and works in AI native, only AI, sales, marketing, a lot of the intake things we've talked about, AI first, the way we deliver our AI practice as
Yep.
AI engineers, kind of collapsing software quality platform, things you just talked about, the soccer team shrinking a little bit, put them in their own practice. And then you get the data and AI team over here. So between data and AI and our AI systems practice that can build with agents or build agentic systems,
Yep.
put those together and go after the customers that we know are going to be receptive to this type of work, and then begin to scale out the team members. I don't think you need nearly as many in that AI systems practice, but begin to scale that out and being intentional about it. And then when customers are ready on the Fortune 500 side, use that same team to incubate the rest of our practices, go in, pick very specific spots to go try this out with them, begin to deliver. But until then, don't stop your own progress because you may not have a receptive audience over here. And I'm really frustrated with myself that I didn't pick up on that faster. I feel like I wasted 4 months.
Yeah.
But
4 months is still pretty quick
it's
because
it's okay. Yeah.
that could be like a year, 2 year, 3 year long lesson, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. I feel like 4 months is still, I mean, that's the builder mindset. Iterate, reduce
Yeah.
cycle time, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I feel like 4 months is pretty short
I
for
wish
that.
we would have failed faster, but yeah, we're getting there. And, given a little grace, I do feel like the world changed when Opus 4.5, I think it was November-ish last year, came out.
Yes.
All of a sudden, it's like, okay, I get this. I understand, things are so much better now. So maybe from November until when we started trying out, that was the gap. But now that things like OpenClaw have come out and you have executives at these companies talking about it and they're talking to their CEO friends and CTO friends, are, oh my gosh, I saw a company that pumped out their whole sales and marketing on OpenClaw and they're beating us. And now all of a sudden there's FOMO
Yep.
and it's getting a little more fun to go back into some of those same customers, right? And so
Yeah.
for whatever reason, OpenClaw seems to have supercharged these conversations around laying down agentic systems, moving from individual productivity to department, and now to really organizational systems thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, OpenClaw stormed into the scene, got a bunch of bad press, right? Because they
Yeah.
renamed like three or four times, right? And then OpenAI bought up the guy, hired the guy.
Peter, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Like it got, but that was a good thing
yeah.
because it stormed onto the scene because we saw for the first time practically what an agentic, like a multi-agentic system is capable of,
Right,
right? And in practice that you can use, it's not that hard to set up
right.
and it does stuff. It gets stuff done,
Yeah,
which is exciting.
yeah.
So
It starts a conversation, right? And
yeah.
then, okay, well, how can I use my ecosystem? I bought all these Claude licenses. Oh, let's talk about Claude SDK and the way to put it in motion. There's an agent orchestration platform there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
S-
Yeah.
String your data in there. How
Yeah.
are you thinking about it? And so I'm optimistic about where we're going. We're still not there, right? What am I
Yeah.
learning? Things are still a little slow in areas, but I'm seeing really optimistic signs around people moving faster. They're getting excited. There's an optimism that I see building that's
Yeah.
going to unlock some of this, like, AI labs work
Yeah.
at a
Yeah.
broader level.
Yeah. So I don't remember how long ago this was, but I remember we went and got coffee right over there at Waterbean.
Yeah, yeah,
And we were talking about what I was doing, what you were going to do. I think this was probably before you, or maybe it's right after you left. Slalom. But I remember talking to you about it. I remember thinking like we both sat there and I was like, I don't really know what's gonna happen, but I'm here for it. Like I'm gonna explore it. The builder mindset. I'm gonna explore it. Uh, and I was curious about. And I don't know if you can't talk about this. That's okay. But I was curious about this hypothesis that you mentioned, and that was I was talking to the team about this in preparation for today. That was you're gonna focus on outcomes, right? And I had my sort of definition of it, and you brought a new definition of that that was very interesting to me and really exciting. Uh, and the reason is because I will always bet on myself, my team. We're capable.
Yeah.
We know what we can solve. We know that there will be problems that are going to be harder than we expect to solve, but we have confidence that we can do it. Right?
It's still a people business.
It's still right. It's still a people's
Yeah.
business. And so that definition was, you know, we can go into companies. We know what they're doing. We can do a sort of a deep dive on their departments and their overall operations, and we can go in and do an implementation for them at no cost or at a shared cost or some model like that. But you're betting on the outcome. So if they get what the value that you're promising them, then you take some upside in that value. So I'm curious, like, between then and now, have you implemented that? Have you tested that? Have you got any feedback on that?
We have. I mean, I think it's the dream for everybody right now.
Yeah.
Is everybody wants to move into the outcome based contract where you do things like, hey, I'll charge you 25 cents per invoice, and you're good enough at it, you understand what it takes to deliver it, that you keep some of the margin better
Yep.
than if you would have done time and materials.
Yep.
Pragmatically, I talked about the frustration of some of the bigger companies. We get pushed into procurement,
Hmm.
and the procurement wants to know what your dollar per hour is.
Yeah. They don't.
Right.
They can't operate in that world. It just doesn't work.
Very hard to get to these outcome-based contracts. So I think working with the business is helpful if you find someone that will represent you with procurement and talk about those outcomes that we can bring. But to answer your question directly, it has not been like our water being conversation.
Yeah.
I was probably a little over optimistic or naive around the outcomes right now look more like, okay, you've got a capacity paradox. Let me show you how to put AI into your operations and reduce your get to your SLA time. So
Yeah.
the really cool, I mean, some of those outcomes where we had a large telecom provider go, man, I've got this SLA where I'm supposed to solve 80% of my customer issues within 24 hours. And I can only get to 72. I wish I would have contracted and said, if I could get you to 80%, could we have some sharings? And I think they would have said yes, but we just went and solved it.
Hmm.
They're in the 90s now, and we just had a
You moved too fast.
They're in the 90s, and we did great, but we
Yeah.
didn't really think all the way through it. So I think we're aspiring to get there. You got to be you got to be good at understanding the problem domain
Yeah.
before you can go put a fixed price outcome based contract in. And because things are moving so quickly, the way we're using all the tools now, is different than it was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Radically different.
Yes.
And so I think now we're starting to get to the point where we can pick a domain, focus on it, and actually do it. Until then, it's going to be, let me fix your capacity,
Yeah.
paradox issue. You're having trouble innovating. Let me show you how to improve that. And I can contract around that, but it's not yet 25 cents per invoice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. So then the majority of what you're seeing, like what are the patterns and the problems that you're solving for these? Is it predominantly capacity, like internal SLAs, external SLAs, or are you seeing companies also trying to innovate? Like how do they add more value to the service or product that they're providing to the world now that they have AI capabilities?
Yeah. One really cool use case I saw was with a rail company, and they had this old application, but it's complex, right? Written in an old tech stack. And they said, we're having trouble innovating. We're having people come to us and they want our platform, but it's only single tenant.
Mm.
So for the first time, it's like, okay, we know how to untangle this
Yep.
and modernize it. We can do that. And the business impact is going to be that we'll create you a multi-tenant system,
Yeah.
right? And so we delivered on that. It started off kind of a legacy way, and over time we're moving towards doing it the agentic way. We've gotten better at it.
Yeah.
Feeding into things like spec kits. So we've got a thing we call Reforge that goes in and rips code apart, documents it line by line, gives you enough plain English information around it that we can go push it into a spec to put it
Yeah.
in a spec-driven design. So, and then it's like you're building a net new application from everything you've pulled out from Reforge and fed into Spec Kit and some of these things and moving forward. So these problems we're solving are changing, getting more interesting. They are unlocking innovation, which is your original question. And I think people would have been, this company had probably been a little nervous to do some of these moves without being able to get to the outcome faster or be able to test it faster, right? To show value faster. They wouldn't sign a contract with another provider, in the multi-tenant environment if they didn't think we could get there within, 6 to 12 months versus 3 to 6 years
Right.
in some
Yes.
of these cases.
Which was the traditional timeline,
Yeah.
right?
You,
Because you
you
got
can
it all
now
by hand.
attack stuff that you couldn't attack before because of time and risk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 100. That's interesting. The risk profile has shifted, right? Because like
Yeah.
you can fix your exposure, right? You can limit your exposure because the time horizons are significantly shorter,
Right.
right? And so it's going to cost this much. You really realistically you're going to see some enough progress to know that this is going to work or not in a much shorter time frame.
Yeah. On that risk front with AI, by the way, we have a friend in Charlotte. I think it's very interesting where he can read in HIPAA high-tech rules, regulations, things that are inside, company policies, and AI, will produce the Terraform that
Yeah,
enforces those rules, right? And then you can put AI ops over the top to monitor it. Just a cool example of
yeah.
how
Is
to
it
take
product?
risk out. Yeah.
Is it you productize it?
Yeah, he has prototyped it.
Oh,
The
that's
company
awesome.
is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should name drop him in the steal, but
Uh,
I'll tell you afterwards and you can drop it in here
I
if
don't
you
mind
want.
if you
But
do. I mean, but there's another group who I think they worked at Slalom with us, and they went to market for modern enterprise modernization, right? And so they have a product, and they operate the machine, and they teach you how to operate the machine. They're probably more evolved now. Last time I talked to them was a while ago, but they did the same thing. They productized teams of AI agents to go in and modernize your implementation so that way it's easy, and then code quality too, right? Because these systems are 10, 20 years old, right? And so people are writing this stuff by hand
Mhm.
long time ago. And so they modernize it, they increase the code quality. And so that way now, you can continue on an AI native engineering process with your product and move faster,
Yeah.
right? Because AI repeats bad patterns that it sees. So you need some
Yeah.
clean
What's the
patterns.
what's the actual business rule, the requirement?
Yes.
Do people even care about this thing anymore?
Right.
Is it duplicate? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can do things differently now.
Yeah.
We don't turn in what is it? COBOL into JOBOL
Yeah.
Java.
Yeah.
Those old things that used to just move the COBOL into bad Java. No,
Yes.
we don't have to do that anymore.
No, right. You can clean it up now. You can you
Right.
can centralize your rules and your business logic layer and all that stuff that you couldn't do before because it took 100 people and $20 million to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, what questions do you have for me? Because normally we talk, we just go back and forth, but I've been asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. I mean, I could ask every question you ask me. I could turn it back around on you. I want to learn from you, right? You're excellent at your craft, and you're a full stack leader.
I appreciate
Are
that.
you moving into outcome contracts? How are you evolving your team? How are you coaching? How are you spreading the ball to your much smaller team now?
Yeah, we are not quite there on outcome based contracts. Same thing. It's sort of like how do and we're lucky because we operate in the mid market, right? And so there's some procurement, but there's less procurement,
Yeah.
and usually you can it's one of the executives who are our sponsors, our project sponsors. But we haven't moved into outcome based contracts yet. It's on the radar.
Yeah.
And it's really for me, it's really like uh, I'm still trying to figure out how to structure that in a way that makes sense for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, but we can talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, my philosophy on leadership is kind of what you just said. You described this well. It's like the world that we're in now has to be sort of grassroots. So you give people, basically unlimited, burn your tokens, here are the tools, play with
Yeah.
the tools, experiment, learn, and grow because it's all new. And so collectively we have to adopt that, right? And so one of the things that's important to me is I hire people who have that mindset, who
Yeah.
who are like they're just excited about it, right? And so they want to go learn, and then I give them, the resources to do that, and then we talk about it internally, right? And so, uh, one of my core leadership philosophies um, is lead by example, right? And so I'm doing it too, right? I'm experimenting, and I'm like, oh, here, look at this cool thing that I did, and that gives other people the freedom to do the same thing. And so like everyone's sort of doing that now. They're like, look at this thing, look at this thing. Here's this link, you know? And that has worked well because we've evolved. We have uh your delivery harness is probably more mature than ours because you have teams of people working on it. But we have a delivery harness that we've stood up that helps us go from here's the problem space that we're trying to solve, here's the vision, and then we just sort of like move that down into less and less ambiguity as we go, all the way through implementation. So it doesn't stop there. And so we've built these teams of agents. We have sets of guardrails that we put on top. We have monitoring that we put on top, and then we've automated the obviously the code part, but also like sort of the space research part of this.
Yeah.
Because again, like the capacity paradox, we're reducing cycle time. So we've got to ramp up quickly to what we're solving through series of conversations with our clients. At a high level, that's how we're solving it, right? And so it's really exciting because uh, where we were a year ago to where we are today is a completely different picture, right? And Opus 4.5 and then now 4.6 had a big role to play in that, but the continuous advancement of the models will continue to play a role in that, and we have to stay at the edge. So that's what we do.
You said something that's fun to hear too, though. You have a harness.
Mm-hmm.
So you have spent time thinking through your workflow. You have agents throughout the process, and so the way you're scaling your team, spreading the field, is you're teaching people. Curious people, brains matter. Engineering is back.
Yes,
but you're teaching those strong engineers how to execute over the top of your agents or put your agents to work. So
yeah,
the 90 pull request.
well, they're teaching me that they're doing that. They're leading that, but they're teaching me that it's really collaborative. It's just like, I sit mostly in like sales and marketing, and, Jarvis runs delivery, and our staff engineers are the ones at the edge. And so they're doing it, and they're saying, this works well, this doesn't work well. I tried this tool, here are the problems. And so it's really just sort of like this collective conversation, continuous conversation between all of us. And we're small enough that we can do that still, right? Of like, what's working, what should we scale, what should we turn into a process?
Yeah.
And then, what still needs to be exploratory.
Yeah. You have all your little agents like deployed as bots inside of Telegram and Slack reporting back on their progress.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I know, it's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah, one of the things that we have standardized, two things we've standardized now that are again sort of being outcome focused. We've standardized our process, right? Like internally, right? To get from first conversation to like now you've realized value, right? And so in two core lanes, right? One is like how do you build a fairly complex, compliant B2B SaaS product? Because there's a lot of companies trying to do that.
Yep.
What we're seeing, there's a lot of companies who are services businesses, small to mid-market firms who are services businesses who are looking to now productize because it's so much faster, cheaper to do, right?
Absolutely.
And so we've standardized that. And then the second one is, sort of what you're doing with is the capacity problem, the SLA problem for mid-market firms who have they're oftentimes SaaS plays too, right? But I saw this post the other day and it was like SaaS is dead, and I was like, that's kind of ridiculous because maybe like simple SaaS is dead, but like B2B SaaS where you have actually a full operations behind the SaaS, that's not dead. It's not going anywhere. You're providing a service. You have SaaS to help you provide that service, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think that's dead. And so we standardize how we go in and we help them increase their efficiency. So like a lot of what we're seeing is there's still a lot of manual processes. So humans reading emails or reading documents or listening to voicemails, or some people still use fax, right? And so all of that like plumbing work, just like we talked about, the plumbing code is gone. All of that plumbing work could be gone in your organization today because AI can reason about the information, right? And so really what we're finding is that the decision making, right, reviewing and make sure that the decision that is recommended by AI is augmented with all this data that's automated into the pipeline. And so the decision making is the high value work that still needs to be done. So.
Absolutely. There's all right, I'll go on a tangent a little bit.
Yeah.
But software as a service is dead, or software is dead.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to a podcast, like AI Daily News, I think.
I love that podcast.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But one of them, did you hear the one about robots. Like, so if you buy a robot and you put it in your house, right? You're not going to get rid of your microwave or your stove or anything like that, right? You're not going to, it's not going to have a laser pointer fingered for the microwave, and right, it's not going to have a dishwasher built in. It's going to use the tools that are there, right?
Right.
So what you just said was, yeah, the robot comes in your house and it's going to learn how to use the microwave. It's going to learn how to use the washing machine, the oven, all that stuff. So yeah, probably Salesforce isn't going away. Gong's probably not going away, but our agentic workflows are going to pull them in, understand enough about them. We're going to have skills over the top that make them usable, and that's our path forward. At least that's what I hope. I kind of feel like that's the pattern we're putting in now.
Yeah,
unless you're using a very small subset of Salesforce and you can quickly replicate it.
Sure, yeah. Like I think that's the whole argument of SaaS is dead, is because like you can just build your own. But that's not really true. Because the world is still like anything that we do is for people.
Yeah.
Right. It's not for the robots, at least today. Right. It's for people. So
be nice to them, though. You never know.
I'm always nice. I use please.
Thank you, please. Oh,
my buddy was like, "Don't use please." I was like, "Well, you never know, buddy. Like,
you got to train the models to be nice.
Right. Like, I'm a nice human. I'm here. I'm for it. Like, coexist in peace."
Right. So, our conversations are training these models, right? We want them to be nice.
Yes, which brings me to the top. But like the world is still people to people, right? And so everything's still person to person. There are mundane tasks that we want to automate, right? So the robot doing my laundry would be amazing, because like I do a lot of laundry. I have kids. They're always dirty. They play all the sports, right? So, but they're not replacing people, and I think that's they're not replacing people in terms of like what we're trying to achieve, right? In terms of the value that we're trying to provide, right? Like you and me, like we want to talk. This doesn't work with an AI agent, right? Like we're humans. We want to have a connection, right? And that's a species-wide thing, right?
My OpenClaw better be working hard though while I'm in here, because there's stuff that's got to get done.
Exactly. Yes. So yes, I think like that's what AI is doing now. The automation is removing the plumbing work that we have to do to move our lives forward, to find value and meaning in our lives. And so I think that's the trend that we'll continue to see. And I also think that the possibility of a Skynet, of AI being sentient and organizing around its own goals and values, that's a real possibility. But that's not really what we're trying to achieve. We're just trying to find ways to remove, and this is the whole evolution of the species, right? Like we had this conversation one time. Paper towels are a luxury. I'll never forget you said this to me. I love paper towels too. I will always buy them. But they're a luxury item, right? Because you could use, before paper towels were a thing, you used a towel, right? Or a cloth, right? We are, as a species, are continuing to innovate and make our lives more comfortable. That's what we're doing. And I just think that's what we're trying to do with AI, even though there is a potential existential risk, right?
Yeah.
So
the tension's still important, right?
Mm-hmm.
The tension's important. The discomfort we're in now, we actually love.
Yes.
Right? The suffering a little bit, it's kind of fun. It creates a dopamine hit. You got to achieve something, right? So right now it's like if you're keeping up, you're excited about this because there's tension. You have to figure it out. You have to work hard at it. It's frustrating some days, and other days figure it out and you get the win. High five with the customer. Yeah, I love this. So I hope we don't ever get rid of all the tension. We need the tension.
Yeah, agreed.
Gotta suffer a little bit, figure this out, and have the dopamine moments together.
Yeah, if you don't have any suffering, then there's no value in the wins.
No, this is a whole different podcast. May not be AI related, but it's a good one.
You can certainly make an AI out of it. But yes, agreed. Well, anyways, I appreciate you coming. I always love to have a conversation with you. And it was a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Appreciate being here.
Awesome.